Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another great episode of Foxborough Central. I am Bob Hickey, your host, thanking you for taking a little bit of time to join me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough the gem of Norfolk County. And I am so glad you took a little bit of time to join me today, in particular because I am honored to be joined by Elizabeth McEnaney.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to be here today.
Well, it's great to have you. And every once in a while, you just go through life and you keep your ears open, your eyes open, and you listen, you talk, and you come across some fascinating people. Don't you feel that to be the case?
All the time.
All the time. Well, I was in my backyard and I came across a fascinating person, you. And I thought, what better way to continue with our Interesting People of Foxborough series than to invite you to be on the program. And let's start off with Liz, right?
Yes.
Okay, Liz. And Liz is a 1996 graduate of Foxborough High School. Mm-hmm. How was Foxborough High School?
Foxborough High School was great. I'm still in touch with a lot of friends from Foxborough High School, so I'm back this weekend cleaning out my mother's house, and had friends come over from high school to watch, to claim things, to to keep us company.
Do a little reminiscing and make the cleaning out a little bit easier. It's got to be hard going through the memories.
It really is. But I see a lot of people. I live down in New York City now, and there are a lot of Foxborough grads there. So it's great to be able to catch up with them in the city.
There are a lot of Foxborough grads in New York City.
There are.
Well, let's take a little trip then, shall we? And by the way, folks at home, this is going to be a fascinating program, not because of just one person, but just the volume of life experience in such a small life. And so I'm pumped about this. So we only have 28 and a half minutes. We're going to go fast time.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
After leaving Foxborough High School, what happened?
After leaving Foxborough High School, I went to Wellesley College and majored in architectural history.
Architectural history.
A
fascinating choice.
Yes, slightly difficult to find a job choice.
Well,
in retrospect.
I was just going to say, what is the market for an architectural history major?
It's very small, as you might imagine. So you have to become very creative in terms of employment or what it is that you do next.
So the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about a non-traditional career path.
Right, and as I advise everyone to become, go into finance or programming or something, an intelligent choice.
An intelligent choice. Well, okay, now she's being humbling, and that's okay. But because I'm fascinated by this. So, you went to Wellesley, and you got your degree.
I did, and then I moved to New York.
And that would be in 2000. Then,
2000.
If I'm doing basic math.
Yep.
Because I am in finance and I can do basic math.
Moved to New York in 2000.
Okay.
And ended up going to graduate school at Columbia for historic preservation.
Excellent.
Yep. And when I got out, I ended up working at a foundation for a while that funded a lot of projects in New York City and also internationally. The focus of the foundation was on Italian art and antiquities, but the director at the time took the idea that all roads lead through Rome. So we were able to fund everything, projects in Brooklyn, New York, or the Midwest, or India even. So it was a great chance to work on a number of projects all over the world.
Isn't that interesting?
No, it was great. It was absolutely fabulous. And then from there, I did make the jump to doing projects. I moved to India and lived in Delhi, where I was hired by an Indian company and actually worked on several preservation projects there, and still consult on projects in India. So most of my projects in preservation, I'd say they kind of fit in, there's two themes, which is somewhat, when people ask what I do, it tends to be all over the map, and I think it's hard to say exactly what it is, but I think the two themes are, most of the projects have to do with bringing the past to the present and really storytelling about historic sites or just history in general. And the other is they all tend to be a bit entrepreneurial because there's a little bit of risk, or I think there's an unlikeliness that a lot of them are going to get off the ground. So there's a little bit of wishing on a star and hoping that they happen.
Well, part of the interesting, just the whole piece of it is that you are bringing in the commercial aspect of history to the present and trying to create a monetary value to old stuff.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
a great way of putting it.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess I'm paying
it really
attention to my
is.
own program. Very good. So with that, sounds as though you've had at least some modicum of success. We've had some real opportunities to do something, and you don't get the next opportunity unless you were somewhat successful in the prior opportunity, or else, as with actors and people like me, we end up, writing columns or working at a restaurant. So tell me, what are some of the huge successes you had, or even key successes that are the building blocks where we're at now? And by the way, the thing that really turned me on about this is we're going to talk about a steamboat.
A 1902 steamboat.
A 1902 steamboat that is in the middle of nowhere that is going to become a showpiece. So that's your tease. So stay tuned for the second half of the program. But we have to get to this point.
To that point.
How do we get here?
Well, it's just been a cast of characters. I mean, since moving to New York, I think that a lot of people who kind of work on some of these urban projects we're probably all a little bit crazy. And I think it's that group of people of just working with these people that projects kind of come together and happen. So since kind of coming back from working in India, I mean, most of my projects have been, as I mentioned, storytelling. So I did an exhibition on the history of Staten Island, New York's forgotten borough, at the Museum of the City of New York, which was a great project and kind of introduced me to museum exhibitions and curations. And now I'm doing an exhibition on the history of modern architecture in Maputo, Mozambique. Maputo, Mozambique is the capital city of Mozambique.
Okay.
And Mozambique was a former Portuguese colony.
Are you doing that in Mozambique?
I'm doing that in Mozambique. So that
From New York?
From New York.
While we're here in Foxborough. Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. So,
the world is getting smaller every day.
It is, it really is. But I think that a lot of the projects are just putting together key teams of people and finding the right project partners. So for me, New York is so much a buzz about this whole idea of startups right now. Tech startups are all the craze, and there's a lot going in Brooklyn, which is where I live. So a partner that I'd worked with on a number of projects, she is a programmer. She and I kind of came together and decided, maybe we can figure out a way to actually make some money on history and think about how we could do a technical project. So we're working on an app. It's called Building Block. And it basically gives you the history of what happened in a place. So if you're walking around New York City and wondered, hey, what's the story about this building? Or I wonder what happened on this street corner. You can just pull out your phone, log onto Building Block, and you'll be able to read the history of what happened there and see some historic images and other things like that.
That seems as though it's the ultimate walking tour application.
It is.
That would be fantastic to have.
We can do it here in Foxborough.
We could do it here at our studios at 28 Central Street.
Absolutely. What happened in this building 50 years ago?
Did you know this building had another story on top of it?
No, I didn't know.
Something good for the app. And what's the app name going to be?
It's Building Block.
Building Block. Now, where are we with production?
We're in beta, so we're testing it and having people break it and tell us what they like, what they don't like, and loading a lot of content in now.
And it would work off of a GPS type of thing where it would identify where you're at.
Exactly. So you can use it on your mobile phone, or you can also just use it on desktop. But the way the platform's built out, it's easily scalable to any place. So if we did want to do the history of Foxborough and the Bach building and the bank building across the street, then it would be as easy as taking a historic photo and uploading it and just someone writing the quirky caption. So it's all about figuring out how you try not to make history boring. I mean, I always think science is so cool now. Weather is cool. You've got an entire channel devoted to it. You've got the history channel, but I think there's that history is kind of becoming cool. So it's all about how you spin the story and kind of how you get a quirky little tagline and make people really interested.
Part of the great thing about cable television now, and of course we're on cable television here, the number of channels that are devoted to such a niche market. You've got a pet channel and Shark Week and all sorts of different things. And so I think the overriding message is that there is an opportunity for every niche market to have something devoted to them. But what this sounds like is it's even better because everybody goes to tour somewhere. And we all, for those of us who are of a certain age, we would go to Gettysburg Battlefield and we'd pay a couple dollars and we get the cassette tape and we put it in our car, and then we got to stop 8 and we pushed the button and it said, "Hi, you're now at stop 8." This sounds like such a great step up.
That's the idea of it, and the idea is that students can upload their own histories and their own tours. So, yeah, it's true. I remember we went on walking tours of the Freedom Trail, and this would just kind of be another component. So you could take your own photos as you're walking along and upload your own stories.
So that's called building
block.
And that is your full-time occupation. You have no time for anything else.
Exactly.
No, it's not. Because you do, and we haven't even gotten to the steamboat thing yet. I was also thinking, as I do all my prep for my pre-interviews, I was thinking, why don't I just name a country and then you tell us what your connection to it. So if I were to say, oh, Italy, you would say?
We've worked on preservation projects in Pompeii and in Rome, funding projects for preservation work primarily.
And you graduated college in 2000.
2000.
So we're really only talking 14 years of a career here. So let me say France.
Vacation.
But that's key also, because that means that you are making a living at this, and it's going well. I've not vacationed.
Some days are better than others.
Well, there you go. Canada.
Well, I'm going to Detroit at the end of this week, so I'm bringing my passport to cross the bridge to go to Windsor, Canada.
And the reason for that is partly scoping and partly
because of this steamboat project that I'll talk about, but I'm spending a lot of time in Detroit these days, which is incredibly interesting as a city. I mean, talk about Rust Belt and so many challenges, but there are these incredible people who are working on projects in the city now.
We are hearing and reading a lot about the decay of Detroit and the fact that a third of the streetlights are shut off, and there are entire neighborhoods that are not only blighted but pretty much abandoned. And what is your take on the city itself?
Well, I've been going out there probably 2 weeks a month for the past 6 months, and it's still a city that I can't quite wrap my head around. And I say this having spent a lot of time thinking about urban planning and preservation, but it is. There's sections, 2-block sections, and then you're in a completely blighted area. But there's a lot of young people who are starting creative businesses. There are a lot of tech companies that seem to be going in, or there are a lot of art designers who are out there. How that will trickle down and affect the rest of the city, aside from this small group of creative people, I'm not sure. I think it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But I do think that there's an energy in Detroit and kind of this sense that anything can happen. It's almost the wild, wild west. If you dream something, the city seems to is going to let you move forward or at least try something. So there's this great experimentation, and I think that's what really attracts me to Detroit. And I've done a lot of work in the Hudson Valley and a lot of these cities in the Hudson Valley. I think my sense of the Hudson Valley in New York State before going there was, oh, this is where there are lots of country houses, and it's where the farmers market stuff is coming down to New York City. But there are actually all of these little cities up there, like a Newburgh or Poughkeepsie, that are these mini Rust Belt cities. And on a much smaller scale than Detroit, they're facing some of the similar problems. So I think for me, it's been really interesting to go to Detroit and just see how these Detroiters have been able to kind of just get energy and attract new younger people and start projects and just see what happens. There's very much an entrepreneurial can-do spirit out there that I think is kind of the new Detroit export.
Well, that's a strong message of encouragement, and there you go. So what I'm going to ask now is if we can flip up your magic laptop there, and through the magic of television, we are going to bring to you not only pictures, but we're going to bring to you a story of what your current project is.
So this is the current project that's taking up most of my time these days.
Okay.
It's called the SS Columbia Project. So the plan is that, I'll flip through, New York,
Whoop.
Don't worry.
Well, the magic of television is great, and of course,
So New York State, New York City, the Hudson River, used to have this incredible tradition of what were called day line boats. And they were these steamboats that would take people from New York City up the river, and they'd stop at Bear Mountain, which is this great state park where there's incredible hiking, or they'd go to Poughkeepsie where people would go have lunch or go to their country houses, and they went all the way up to Albany. And this was a tradition that had been going on in the Hudson River in New York State since the late 19th century. And it was one of the few ways, I mean, if you were a tourist coming to New York City in the late 19th century, Charles Dickens or people from that era, you wouldn't dream of coming to New York City without going to the Hudson Valley. Okay. It's like today going to San Francisco. Most people wouldn't dream of going to Napa or seeing the countryside outside of San Francisco. It was that same idea in New York. And that connection's been somewhat lost, and we haven't had any of these boats since the 1970s. So this is just an image of an old advertisement for one of these boats. The Hudson, the most beautiful of rivers, is at its best in these autumn days. All steamers built exclusively for day travel. So you have this incredible history and these great marketing schemes for getting people on these boats. These are just some images of the boats, and they had fabulous names: the Hendrick Hudson, the Washington Irving. This one I think is also the Washington Irving, or the Alexander Hamilton.
It looks packed.
Yeah, these boats could hold, some of them, one of them could hold 6,000 people. Most of the other boats held 3,000. So they'd start in New York City.
Now, I know the Hudson's a big river, and I've been there, and we know that somebody, Captain Silverwater, landed an airplane on it. So we know that the Hudson has capacity, but this seems rather cruise ship-ish.
These were rather cruise ship-ish, and they ran several times a week, but it was something that New Yorkers kind of knew was an activity for them, and it was partly about just the experience of riding the boat as it was the destination. So,
well, we all go down there, and when we go, the conversation always comes up whether we act on it or not, whether we take the Staten Island ferry or not. So I suppose it's within the day, sure.
Yeah, and this would just be, I mean, I love the Staten Island Ferry. This is kind of the idea of moving beyond New York Harbor and actually having an easy way to get upstate and just kind of escape the city. So this is just an image of 3 of the boats steaming upriver to Bear Mountain. And so some of the things that were incredible about these boats is not only did they link New York City to the Hudson Valley, but all of these towns were built around the river. So they had main streets, and the main street would terminate in the river, so that you can see in this image, when one of these steamboats would come in, just the entire town would flood down. And it was the kind of the direction of the town was all oriented towards these rivers. We've got the town common, and the town is so much organized around the center.
Here in Foxborough.
Here in Foxborough. But in the Hudson Valley, it's a different layout where everything's organized around the river.
Well, there's always a town center and a town area of commerce and a town hub. And it would make sense that if the river is where your people and goods and action and activity is coming through, that would be it. So with the riverboat era, admittedly being, and even as a history major, I think we can agree on this, it's not the riverboat era anymore.
No.
So what is the charge here? What's going on?
Well, I mean, the charge is partly what's happened. I think there are a few things. Partly what happened to these towns. So you did have these towns that were so connected to the river, and then in the 60s and 70s that connection was lost, in part because of urban renewal, but in part because there were no more boats that were driving people down.
And we had cars.
So the main street that used to come up from the river, people were no longer shopping on the main street. They were driving to the malls. So it kind of had the phenomenon that happened in so many main streets, including Foxborough's main street to some extent. Yeah, you don't drive down Main Street. You'd much rather go to the mall where there's a big parking lot and kind of big box stores. So these main streets in a lot of these Hudson Valley towns just kind of went blighted, and no one was shopping on Main Street. Main Street was not the place that you wanted to be. So in part, there's been people have been looking at how you can reactivate the main streets in the Hudson River. And one of the ways to do this is to, again, make it the focus. So there's the thought of, if you can, again, reconnect these town main streets to the waterfront, then what will that do for the main streets? If we're having boats that are coming in, that are bringing tourists, they're going to come to the main street to eat, to shop, but also the people who live in the town are more likely going to come down there because there's going to be an attraction on the waterfront. There's going to be more of a reason to come down. So in part, it's a project to get these towns going again and to try to revitalize some of the main streets. It's also a tourist initiative, and you've got I think 56 million tourists who came to New York City last year, and I think there's 1% of them go to the Hudson Valley. So if there's an easy way via boat to get tourists in New York City upstate, it's also going to spur the economy and get things going. So this boat, which I'll show you an image of, it's incredibly beautiful and romantic, but there's also a whole economic reason for starting this project.
Well, this sounds like such a huge project. There has to be a number of facets that come together. You have to have the economic impetus, but also you have to have capital support, because your time isn't, I mean, you seem like a great person, but you have to live. And you have, and I understand you're also a professor at Columbia University?
I do. I teach the grad students in historic preservation their studio class. So I teach them how to research buildings and write about New York City neighborhoods. So that is, I spend part of my time doing that.
Wow. And then so I'd like to talk about that also, but let's stay with the boat for a second. The different communities that are along the river, they would surely be supporting something like this, but it's such a huge undertaking as far as coordinating, because you've got every group has their own chamber of commerce, and every group has their own leaders who may want this, may want that. But all that doesn't happen unless you have a boat.
Right.
Where is this boat now?
So here is
I suspect it's in Detroit, because you keep saying you go back to Detroit.
The boat is in Detroit. So here's an image of the Detroit skyline with these two steamboats. So Detroit, they're two wonderful boats. The one that we're bringing to New York was built in 1902. Here's an image of it.
The 1902 steamboat.
1902 steamboat.
In Detroit.
In Detroit, built for the Detroit River.
Called?
The SS Columbia.
The SS Columbia.
Mm-hmm. And the boat was always built for the Detroit River. It used to take people from downtown Detroit to an island off the coast of Canada. It was called Boblo Island. It was this big amusement park. And if you talk to any Detroiter over the age of 30, they all have memories of what it was like being on these boats. And they'll say, oh my gosh, those Boblo boats. So these boats were just kind of incredible in the history of the city. And the history of the boat somewhat mirrors the history of Detroit, in that when they were built in 1910 or 1902, as the case of the SS Columbia, it was the high time in Detroit, and you had these elaborate interiors in the boats. I mean, they stained glass, painted ceilings. They were absolutely beautiful. And kind of in the 60s and 70s, when the riots happened in Detroit, no one wanted to go downtown Detroit, so the boats kind of, I wouldn't say they lost popularity, but they weren't as elegant or opulent, and
there's a
kind of the
shifting in the whole environment as far as what people wanted to do, what they felt safe doing, and with the boats being a link to a bygone era, when that era was over, what happened to these boats?
So the boats went out of service in 1991. A developer actually bought the amusement park island and turned it into private housing. So there was no reason to have these boats, since the boats only service this amusement park.
So for locals here, it didn't just happen in Nantasket, it happens other places.
Yeah, exactly. No, the stories of Detroit and kind of even the Hudson Valley, I think, are so similar to what happens in Foxborough in Norfolk County. But so these boats have been sitting out of service since 1991. So the SS Columbia Project, which is the organization that I'm now executive director of, which is working to bring the boat from Detroit to New York, had this incredible founder, this guy named Richard Anderson, who he was looking around for a boat that we could bring to the Hudson River, a boat similar to all the old Dayline boats that I showed you.
I just look up on Craigslist, I'm looking for a boat.
Right. So he found one. He found this boat in Detroit. And since then we're trying to figure out how to get it here. So I'll show you, just click through a few other images. So this is the boat kind of in her heyday. She could hold 3,000 people. You can see her docked up, right?
Liz is calling it a she, and I'm of course talking with Liz McEnaney, who is a 1996 graduate of Foxborough High School, who is a girl of many talents. But we are going to continue with our discussion about the steamboat and how to bring a freshwater steamboat in Detroit to the Hudson River in New York. New York City.
New York City. So these are just a few more images of the boat. You can see the boat loaded with passengers. Here are some drawings of the beautiful interior. So actually this boat was built by the same architects who built the boats in the Hudson River. So there is a nice connection between Detroit and New York. Yeah. They had these incredible steam engines, and part of the experience of being on the boat was viewing these steam engines in motion. And I think that's what a lot of people that we've shown the boat to today are really excited about, this idea of, again, seeing an engine in motion. Because all of our devices, you don't really know how they work or see how they work. And these engines, if you get near them, if you were on the viewing platform, you would just feel the heat coming up. I mean, they're absolutely incredible. This is our boat today. So you can see the boat is not, the boat needs some restoration work. This is the ballroom. But the plan at the moment for bringing this boat to New York, flip through some more of these images.
Sure.
The boat is
amazing restoration project.
It's going to be quite the restoration project. There's the engine room now. This is the crew that's currently working on the restoration and helping us bring the boat to New York City. So we have a tugboat captain who's on board the project, who's helping to kind of work with the Coast Guard to figure out how this is going to happen. So the boat is too big for the Erie Canal, so we have to tow the boat. We have to tow the boat through the Great Lakes, up the St. Lawrence Seaway, out past Quebec, and then down the eastern seaboard. So this is all going to happen next summer, next August or September. The boat's moving for the first time in 10 years. It's moving next month. The boat is going to Toledo. It's going to be in a shipyard in Toledo. It will be raised out of water for the first time, so we'll get to actually see the hull and see what work has to be done. The Coast Guard will be there to let us know what we have to do to prep it for this kind of epic journey to New York and the Hudson Valley.
Epic is a good term.
Epic is a great term. And there's like a lot of peril in this. The boat has never been in salt water before, so this journey down the coast is going to be a test of strength. We're putting together all of the pieces and we're working to make sure it's stabilized and that it will get here. But it's going to be quite an adventure in this ride down the eastern coast.
Wow. We are so out of time. I cannot believe it. We haven't even started touching on a lot of the things I want to touch about. But before we do that, is there a way that people can help out with this project?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can go to the website, sscolumbia.org.
sscolumbia.org.
Okay. And we would love any donations or any help, volunteers. We've got a great team of volunteers and are happy to have other people a part of the project.
Sounds like a fantastic opportunity to bring a little of the past to the present and to spur some economic development or some rebirth, if you will. But forget all that. It's just really cool.
It's just really cool. And you can come on board when it's up and running, and there'll be educational programs, kids fishing, film screenings, theater productions. I mean, the space is so huge. It's kind of one of those places that you can just reimagine
I can
in so
see
many
your
ways.
enthusiasm. This is just, it seems like a labor of love, but also it seems like it's going to be a very important piece of some Hudson Valley development.
Wow. I hope so.
Fantastic. Liz, it has been so good talking to you and,
Thank you, Bob. It's been a
meeting
pleasure.
you on the air and learning about you. I do hope you'll keep us updated on the project.
Absolutely.
Quick question on the building block. Is there a way that people can learn more about that?
They can. You can go to buildingblock.com, and building block is BLDGBLOK.com.
BLDGBLOK.com. Buildingblock.com. sscolumbia.org. Liz McEnaney, good person.
Thanks, Bob.
Fascinating. 1996 graduate of high school, Foxborough High School, and obviously you've taken your good education and done something with it.
Come down to New York.
Come down to New York. And for those of you who can't quite make it to New York, always feel free to check us out on your local cable channel or log on to www.fcatv.org to see this or any of the other programs we do here in Foxborough Central. Until next time, folks, I'm Bob Hickey wishing you a great day, Foxborough. Take care.